Hey everybody, Doomwake here, and welcome back to another video on the channel. With the Pioneer Regional Championship fast approaching, I wanted to take a look and just see what the metagame looks like. It's been a couple of weeks since the recent ban announcement where the metagame got a huge shakeup, and I think with a lot of people preparing for their regional championship, it would be a really good idea to just kind of peek into the format and see what everybody's up to these days. Before we continue, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content, and most importantly, let me know what you thought of this style of content in the comment section down below. I'm thinking about maybe making this a reoccurring thing. Potentially we could even do Modern, because we do have the Modern RCQ season. We could take a look and see what the metagame looks like over there. But for the purposes of today, we're just going to be looking at Pioneer. So, with all of that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the first challenge, which was from Friday. Alrighty, so first and foremost, shout out to the one and only Goat Fire Shoes on Twitter. He likes to post all of the challenges that happen from all the weekends. So, that is where we get the data from. And first and foremost, this is the challenge that took place on Friday night, September 6th. Looks like it was a total of 88 players. And what do we have here for a top 8? So, first place, we have Celestia Angels. I feel like this is a deck that has been picking up a little bit more in popularity over the past couple of weeks since the ban. And, you know, when we get into the metagame breakdown, there might be a particular reason for that. So first place, Celestia Angels. Then we have second place, Rakdos Prowess. For those of you who have not seen this deck list, I really think it was, I want to say it was last week. There was a challenge where I think it was 3 or 4 different people were in the top 8, and they all were playing this sort of Rakdos Prowess shell with Calisel Sword, Heartfire Hero, bunch of pump spells, Monstrous Rage, Titan Strength, and just a whole bunch of ways to pump up a creature. And Calisel Sword is the main win condition, where you pump your Heartfire Hero up, it gets a Valiant counter every time you pump it, and then Calisel Sword to deal your opponent a whole boatload of damage. And this has kind of been the premier aggro deck of the format for basically, I want to say 2 weeks at this point. In third place, we have Jund Sacrifice. So Sacrifice was, I want to say, people were playing Sacrifice prior to the bans, but it definitely fell off a lot because Sorin and Vein Ripper, specifically Vein Ripper, extremely good when you're trying to move creatures in and out of zones, especially from the graveyard. So, not only did the banning of Sorin really help push Sacrifice, they also got some new printings in the form of Yigra and Scavenger's Talent. So, deck has been doing very well. Not surprised to see it here. And then fourth place, we have Azorius Control. Nothing too crazy going on there. And we can just take a look at 5th through 8th. We have another Jund Sacrifice, a Rakdos Midrange. We have, oh, look at that, another Jund Sacrifice. And lo and behold, another Rakdos Prowess. So that is the top 8 breakdown. This is how the metagame shook out. I'm going to go ahead and throw this up over here. So there were 7 Rakdos Prowess, which is a reasonable amount, 4 Jund Sacrifice, 3 Devotion, 3 Angels, 3 Azorius, and then a whole smattering of one-ofs. Now, again, if you haven't been paying a lot of attention to the Pioneer format over the past couple of weeks, this Rakdos Prowess deck, seeing 7 copies and being the most played deck, might surprise you. Well, that trend may or may not continue over the next couple of events. So the next event here we have, which is Saturday, September 7th, which was 100 players. Just kind of going over the top 8 here, we have Lotus Field Combo. I have seen more, the recent Lotus Field Combo lists have actually been incorporating a Baze at the Bounding Spring, with the theory being that the aggressive matchups are pretty bad for Lotus Field, and it is a card that you can search for off of Archdruid's Charm. So some pretty cool innovation there. And then in second place, we have, okay, now this is a deck that I have been seeing a little bit, popping up a little bit recently. This is 4-color Yorion Lumra Omnath. Now, for people who may have seen versions of this deck in Standard that utilize Lumra and Aftermath Analyst and things of that nature, that one is really kind of going all in on the Analyst plus Lumra synergies, where you're playing a bunch of fetch lands, getting those back. You'll notice that this deck list only has 2 Aftermath Analyst, so it's maybe leaning a little bit less on the Analyst stuff. But the thing about Pioneer is you actually get some really good upgrades in the form of Lotus Cobra, which kind of gives you some redundancy on, your Nissas, because in Standard you only have the Nissas to be able to generate mana when you're putting lands into play. So Lotus Cobra gives you a little bit of redundancy on that angle. You have better mana acceleration with Sylvan Caryatid. You get to play Omnath, which is really good in your deck with a bunch of fetch lands. And then the end game here is... There is an infinite loop here. It's extremely convoluted, and it requires you having multiple Lumras, a Port of Carfel. So I don't think that the deck's main game plan is to eventually get to the infinite loop, but it's really just generate a ton of value with Omnaths, Spelunking Cantrips, providing you a bunch of mana. I've seen some of these versions also have World Soul's Rage. This version specifically does not have that card, but it's really just you generate a bunch of mana, eventually get to Yorion flicker some stuff, draw some cards. You're not actually executing an infinite combo most of the time, I think, but yeah, it's just a really good value deck with Yorion. And then in third place, we have Celestia Angels. Sure, you've seen this deck before. And then in fourth place, we have... Okay, this is another really sweet deck. Shout out to Oaf McNamara for this one. I will probably end up recording a video with this deck at some point. But this is Boros Control with Possibility Storm. So hear me out. Possibility Storm, as you can see on your screen, it's an enchantment that says whenever a player casts a spell from their hand, that player exiles this, then flips cards from the top of their library until they hit a card that shares a card type. They can play that without paying its mana cost. So the goal here, or the joke, is you get High Noon in play, which says both players can only cast one spell per turn. Well, with High Noon in play, they play a spell with Possibility Storm, it gets exiled, they flip cards, but then they can't play a second spell, so they just get locked out of the game entirely. And the best part about it is they can't play spells to remove your enchantments. Now, they can Besage You, because Besage You is not a spell, it's an activated ability, but that is a really cool way to lock people out of the game. And then the rest of this is kind of just mid-range and control stuff. Caretaker's Talent, you've seen that card in Standard, I'm sure. Fable the Mirror Breaker, we all know what that does. Wandering Emperor, Sweepers, Bezas, so a lot of ways to generate value. And the nice thing about being two colors, you get to play a ton of utility lands. Oath has a Castle and a Ganjo, 3 Field of Ruin, 3 Fountain Port, and 4 Sunken Citadel and a Soken Sun. So this deck looks really cool, and if you're into the sort of control mid-range game plan, it seems pretty good. And then rounding out the top 8, just very briefly here, we have Rakdos Prowess, Is It Phoenix, and Blue-White Control. Now that we've seen the top 8, let's take a look and see what the metagame looks like for this event. So here we have 5 Rakdos Prowess, 5 Jund Sacrifice, 4 Azorius Control, 3 Angels, 2 Lotus, 2 Izzet, 2 Quintorius, 2 Rakdos Tree. That's Tree of Perdition plus Agatha Soul Cauldron. Really sweet deck. And then a smattering of 1-ofs. So comparing that to the previous one, which is right here, so you see a little bit less Rakdos Prowess, roughly the same Jund Sacrifice, but around the same Azorius Control. So this one looks a little bit more balanced, not quite as top-heavy towards the Rakdos Prowess side of things as the previous challenge we saw. So a little bit of a difference there. But I mean, as you can tell, there's a lot of different decks represented in this top 32. So the next challenge is the Sunday Morning Challenge. So here is the top 8. We're going to breeze through these a little bit because you've kind of seen what the deck lists look like for the most part. So unless there's something new, we're going to just talk about the archetypes and what does that mean for the metagame. So we have Rakdos Prowess in first place, second place, Rakdos Prowess, third place, tell me if you've seen this before, Rakdos Prowess, fourth place, Is It Phoenix, and going through 5 through 8, we have, okay, fifth place, we have an Indomitable Creativity deck. User Watu, who I believe, I'm pretty sure, you can let me know in the comments, I believe that's Wafotapa, has decided to play an Is It Creativity deck, which looks pretty cool. I mean, they were creativiting into Vaultborn Tyrant as opposed to Atraxa. I think I like that in these sort of shells because Blue-Red is a deck that is more likely to be able to creativity for 2 because they have a ton of treasure makers. You can see here, there's Deduces, Prismari Commands, all that kind of stuff, Fable the Mirror Breaker, obviously, as well. So they have 4 ways to generate tokens early. So in the games where you're creativiting for X equals 2, you would much rather have 2 Vaultborn Tyrants than 2 Atraxas because you only get to keep one of the Atraxas. So Vaultborn Tyrant helps you out a little bit there. It also just makes your opponent's removal spells a lot worse. A lot of times what happens with Atraxa is they creativity, they tap out, they put an Atraxa into play, maybe they draw 5 or 6 cards, but if the opponent has a way to remove the Atraxa, then that's usually just game on the spot. And Vaultborn Tyrant says, no thank you, because if they kill the Tyrant, you get a copy of it. That'll trigger both of the other ones, and so on and so forth. So I do like this approach. I haven't really thought about creativity specifically for the RC, but given the performance of this list, maybe something that I should keep in mind. And then rounding out the top 8, we have some more Jund Sacrifice, and we have Izzet Phoenix here in 7th place, and then 8th place, this is Lotus Field Combo. Now, let us see what that looks like for the top 32 breakdown. So it is the top one here. I put these back to back so we can look at the events side by side. So this one here has 8 Rakdos Prowess, 6 Phoenix, 3 Azorius Control, 2 Jund Sac, 2 Lotus Field Combo, 2 Rakdos Midrange, and then some various one-ofs. So a lot more top-heavy in terms of the Rakdos Prowess. Izzet Phoenix as well. I mean, if you look at this is 14-7. These 3 decks take up more than half of the top 32. So a little bit more top-heavy. I am very, very surprised that there's this much Rakdos Prowess, because my experience with that deck has not been fantastic. I mean, it's maybe a small enough sample size, but I'm not 100% convinced that that deck is as good as these numbers are showing you. But maybe it's a product of people who play challenges, want to double or triple queue, or play multiple events, and the deck is extremely fast. The games are over in 5 minutes or so. So that does kind of make a little bit of sense, and it does have some very powerful draws. I mean, it somewhat reliably can kill on turn 3, but the deck does kind of fold to itself a lot of the time, and that's, I think, my big structural issue of it. But that is the first Sunday challenge. We got 2 more here for you, and we're going to kind of do these side by side. So, the Sunday challenge, let's take a look at the top 8. We have Jund Sacrifice, we have Azorius Control, Celestia Angels, and then rounding up the top 8, Quintorius Combo, Boros Convoke. It's been a while since we've seen that. Boros Convoke. It's not been a while since we've seen that. And Izzet Phoenix. So that is the top 8 for the first one. And then for the backup one, this is the last challenge on Sunday night. We have Angels in first place, followed by Rakdos Prowess, Blue-White Control, and Rakdos Prowess. And then rounding up the top 8, we have more Azorius Control, Azorius Control. I saw the carrot cakes and I got a little confused. Like, we can talk about this real quick. I have seen some Blue-White Control list adopting the Carrot Cake plus Caretaker's Talent tech, which is something that is really all over the place in Standard. I kind of like it. Just giving you more card advantage engines as you go later into the game. And what's really nice about Caretaker's Talent, if you just have 1 or 2 Castle Ardenvale tokens, you can actually turn the corner pretty quickly. If you can flip the Caretaker's Talent, you can make them 3/3s, and all of a sudden you go from having 2 1/1s, having 2 power to 6 power. Like, that is a huge difference in terms of the clock if you need to close out the game before your opponent draws out of it. So I do like that approach. And let's just go ahead and take a look at 6th place, which is Rakdos Prowess. 7th place, more Celestia Angels. And last but certainly not least, more Rakdos Prowess. So those are the top 8s for the last 2 events. Now let's take a look at the metagame breakdown. This is for both of them. So 6 Rakdos Prowess, 5 Izzet Phoenix, 4 Angels, 4 Azorius, 3 Jund Sacrifice, 2 Convoke, 2 Devotion, 2 Rakdos Mid, some one-ofs. And then the second challenge, 7 Rakdos Prowess, 4 Azorius Control, 3 Phoenix, 3 Angels, and then the rest, as you can see on your screen. So what does all of this mean? We have a ton of data here. I'm going to put up all 3 challenges on the screen so you can get the sort of the bigger picture and what we are discussing here. So these are the 3 challenges in question, all of the top 32s. You'll notice there is a whole lot of Rakdos Prowess. Now, if you are preparing for the regional championship, I think at this point, it's probably a deck that you can't ignore. You need to make sure that you have some sort of plan, whether it's adding more cheap removal, discard spells, which I find are quite good against them because they're actually more of a combo deck than a prowess deck. They're really trying to set up pump spells plus Callous Sellsword. And if you can break up some of that, like basically take them off of one of those angles of attack, their deck really, you make it a lot worse, right? If they have a Sellsword and a bunch of small creatures, they don't have any way to pump up the power, they're not doing a ton with that Sellsword. And similar thing, if they have too many pump spells, not enough creatures, it's a deck that really does have to draw the right mix of lands and spells in the appropriate order. So discard spells good against them. Sweepers, temporary lockdown, fantastic. If you can find removal spells that don't destroy the creature, because once you get to a certain point with Hardfire Hero, you can no longer kill it, or it will just kill you. So keep that in mind. But yeah, those are some ways to address the Rakdos Prowess deck. It's kind of weird because since the deck was found so early on, like there's still what 3 weeks left before the regional championship, it's possible that the metagame will have time to adapt before the regional championship, and maybe we see a lot less of this deck in a couple of weeks' time. But that's why, funny enough, the Rakdos Prowess deck is the main reason I wanted to start making these over the next couple of weeks, because I want to see over the next couple of weeks, will that deck go back down in terms of popularity? Will Phoenix rise up? So on and so forth. Again, there's a decent amount of Phoenix here, but I mean, if you look at some of these challenge, right? If you look at the 9-6 challenge, there was only one copy of Phoenix. 2 in this challenge. What was it? Okay, 6 in this challenge. That's more reasonable. 5 in this challenge and 3 in this challenge. So it's not even like Phoenix is necessarily all over the place. And I wonder, thinking about this, I haven't seen a lot of this matchup or played a lot of this matchup, but I wonder how the Rakdos Prowess versus Is It Phoenix matchup goes. My guess is that Phoenix would be favored, but with how well Prowess is doing, maybe that's not necessarily the case. In terms of kind of small metagame share winners, I really do like that Is It Creativity deck that we saw from Watu. I think that is one that I want to spend some time on. And then the Boros Control deck that we saw, was this challenge? Yeah, this challenge. Boros Control from Oath McNamara. Those are 2 decks that I really want to spend a little bit of time on, because I think that both of those can be tuned to have a very good matchup against the Rakdos Prowess decks. They inherently have a bunch of cheap removal anyways, and a fast Vaultborn Tyrant or something like that can be good against them as well. And that's pretty much it for today. Again, if you enjoyed this sort of video, please be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. That is the most important part. I would love to hear your feedback and your thoughts. If you are going to the regional championship in DC, I'll see you there. And with all of that said, I will see you next time on, I don't know what we're calling this show, but I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.